Hey Veronica, let's talk Death Wish, I guess.
Wow, what's with the long face, John?
Well, I'm sorry. I just found this movie very offensive. I think it has a very upsetting message, and it puts forward some genuinely gross ideas that I just don't stand by.
So you're not kind of happy with the idea of portraying vigilantism as perhaps a noble calling?
Oh, no. Sorry, you misunderstand me. No, vigilantes are super cool and awesome. No, I'm offended that this movie makes it seem like living in Arizona is cooler than living in New York. And that is bullshit.
All right. I agree with you on that one. Let's kill a CEO.
That's what my bumper sticker says. Kill a CEO,
JK,
never live in Tucson.
Obligatory. JK.
In Minecraft, that's what the kids say, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's get to our movie in Minecraft. Toot toot.
Oh boy. I feel like that derailed. How's it going, John?
It's good, Veronica. How are you doing? Do we check in like this at the beginning of our episodes typically?
I don't know. Do we not? We should. That seems like a decent thing to do.
Okay. How are you doing?
To let people know we like each other, care about each other's well-being. I'm good. Where are we? Cool.
Okay.
And I guess that's why we never do that.
Well, hello, listener. I hope you're also doing well. You are listening to Box Office Time Machine, the show where we talk about the number one movie at the box office, either from the current weekend or weekend far in the past, like perhaps 50 years in the past to 1974, like today's movie. Michael Winners? I should have double checked that. I knew it was Michael Winner. My head suddenly went winter for a second, but no. Michael Winner's 1974 hit Death Wish.
Pow, 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 pow.
If you're watching watching on
I don't know why I did that.
If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sure we're going to be doing Charles Bronson finger gun points throughout this episode. By the way, if you're curious, the Wikipedia plot synopsis of this links to another Wikipedia page for the finger gun gesture. And I just find that very amusing. Yes, there's a whole article explaining what the finger gun gesture is. Anyway, I'm John. Hi.
Hello, John. How are you? Oh, no, we did that part already.
Who are you?
Good. Do you have any history?
Who are you? Say your name.
Oh, I'm Veronica. And I really want to know what your history with the Death Wish franchise is.
Well, I think this is. I think let's start by saying it is an amusing time to be talking about the movie Death Wish.
Oh. All right.
Not only is it the 50th anniversary, but we are perhaps, if when recording this in December of 2024, there is a national conversation about vigilante justice in New York that has caught the attention of the public. And look, violence is never the answer. That is the official position of this show.
Yes.
And you can fill in the gap there. You can fill in that silence with whatever you think I would say if we were talking in public. It might start with the word but. But yeah, no, it is an interesting conversation. Time to talk about this movie, and I'm sure we will get into some of the connections because, hey, that's an interesting thing to talk about in an older movie. But we'll also talk about the movie itself and we'll start by answering your question. What is my history? Very little. I'd never seen this movie before. I'd never seen the Eli Roth. I still have never seen the Eli Roth Bruce Willis remake. I have never read the book by Brian Garfield. And I have never seen the sequels other than some of the scenes from the absolutely insane Death Wish 3. And I was curious going into this of being like, is this... I know how stupid and silly this franchise gets. Is this going to be like a Rambo situation where this is like a First Blood that is very far from what the series became? But it seems more like maybe it's a Watchmen franchise where a filmmaker took a book and just filmed it straight, removing any of the nuance. But we will just we can get into that later. Veronica, what is your history with Death Wish?
Yeah, it's the same, I guess. I didn't even see any clips from it, really. Yeah, all I knew about it is that it was the debut of Jeff Goldblum.
I did know that. I did know that. The wizard himself.
I knew that when the whole Bernard Getz subway shooting happened, it was... for those who don't know, he basically a la Paul Kersey shot some people who were maybe panhandlers, maybe muggers on a subway in the 80s and kind of elicited a whole conversation about vigilantism that we are having our version of right now. And I guess I read a bunch of essays about that contrast. So this is my first time dipping my toe into the Death Wish verse. So what did you think, Josh?
Well, this is interesting. So you have not seen my Letterboxd score. So you said before we recorded that you have no idea how I feel. I saw yours 4 stars. Interesting. I'm going to be honest. This movie left me pretty cold.
Interesting. Well, I will say that for me, the reason for this high score, which I had zero expectation to give as I entered or began watching the movie, because one of the only things I kind of knew about it is that it's like reactionary schlock, and I found it actually what is presented on the screen to me was way more nuanced than I anticipated. I think regardless of the politics of the people behind the scenes, what is on screen to me presents a far more complicated picture of vigilantism and of the inability of institutions to protect the citizens, and what like the public's relationship with vigilantism. I thought all of that worked surprisingly well. And on top of that, I thought the movie was super well done. It was also 90 fast minutes. It was just like, it flew right by. It was also very cool to just see New York in the 70s. I know that it's supposed to be depicted as a hellhole, but I feel like it was still, a lot of its beauty was captured, or some of its obviously less savory elements, but still, it just felt like it wasn't filmed on a soundstage. It felt like it was of a place, which I also really appreciated. What are your misgivings with it?
Well, first off, as a former New Yorker, I was never a D'Agostino's fan. That's not where I shopped. So much of this movie's plot is based around the shopping chain, the grocery store chain D'Agostino's, that it is also, I'm shocked that they allowed them to film it. The movie starts with, if you shop at D'Agostino's, the carelessness of the employees might lead to you being beaten to death and or sexually assaulted, which is insane. So I don't know why the D'Agostino's family agreed to that.
It's a New York institution. They take the good, they take the bad.
Okay. So there's so many ways to dive into this. I think we can get to the politics and what we think the movie is or is not saying, and how it does or does not say those things. But as I was watching this, and I was sitting there, and I was like, I might have talked about this on the podcast before or just ranted in life. One of my least favorite canards in the
canards.
One of my least favorite lies in like the right wing reactionary playbook is the lie that all American cities are crime, like hellhole crimescapes. Because I think it's just so deeply sad when you talk to people who say live like a Fox News media diet and then go, oh, I would never go to New York because it's hell and you die instantly. And I just think that's so depressing and sad because it's not. You won't. There's a reason many more people live in cities than do elsewhere, because I'm sorry, for most people, it's a better way to live. And I just think it's awful that the liars are making those people cut off great experiences, yada, yada, yada. And I know 1974 New York is not 2024 New York, but that's just like a bias that I bristle against instantly. So coming in, the movie was already in a hole. But as it was going on, I was trying very hard to think, let me think pure filmmaking. Let me imagine if this same story was actually not about shooting silly gang members, but was instead shooting real criminals. Like, I don't know, I'm going to pick off the top of my head, randomly healthcare CEO. Just picking off the top of my head, would I enjoy this movie more? And I think no. I think I still wouldn't really enjoy it because at the end of the day, my major problem with this movie is that I don't care about Paul Kersey. I don't care about the police investigating. And look, I got nothing against Vincent Gardenia. Sorry, I have nothing against Charles Bronson. And I love Vincent Gardenia. That's Mr. Mushnick.
He's great.
But I don't give a shit about the investigation. I don't give a shit about Paul Kersey. Partly, I just don't think the Kersey character is that interesting as how he's depicted. And I think some of that might have to do with the way it was changed from the source material, which we can get into. But we keep alluding, obviously, to the shooting of the CEO guy, Brian Thompson, by Luigi Mangione. And in that case, in that real life case, same as this movie, the most interesting story to me is not the killer or the victim. It is the public's reaction to it and what that says about the circumstances that people are currently living in. And I so wanted more of that because I did not find the moment to moment stuff. Like, I don't find Kersey's like mental state to be interestingly depicted, and we don't really get a process. The book has more scenes of like how he presents himself, how he basically lures out these criminals. From what I gather, I've not read the book, but having just like read like synopses and stuff, he does stuff in the book that I do know that they actually use in later movies in the series. Like, he purposefully rents a car and parks it in a bad area waiting for someone to rob it. Whereas in this version, it's just like literally everywhere he goes, a criminal will just appear and walk up to him. And so I don't I don't get the fun of the process of how he lures these people out to then kill them. I get the fun of his escapes. Like, I think the most exciting moment of the movie is when he jumps into a subway car right before a police officer runs down and he gets away free. Like, there's a primal like thrill of seeing someone get away with something like that. But other than like the detectives, like Mr. Mushnick, I'm just going to keep calling him. He's way too good at his job, as we've seen in a real life manhunt. Way too good at his job. He's just instantly, the first thing I think the character says is, we should look at people whose family members got mugged in the last 3 months. Like, he doesn't even, and it's not like Bronson carved words into the bullet casings. But like, so while there is interesting stuff in the filmmaking, some interesting framing, it just kind of left me cold. And you say how fast it is. It didn't feel fast to me because I saw the name Christopher Guest in the credits and spent 90 minutes waiting for Christopher Guest to appear. Christopher Guest, another actor from Little Shop of Horrors.
Would you say you were waiting for Guffman?
I was waiting for Guffman for 90 minutes, waiting for Corky, and then he literally shows up in the second to last scene. But yeah, so it just kind of left me cold. So
this is interesting, actually, because you mentioned like you were not having fun with this movie. And I agree. I was not having fun at all. I actually think that is one of the better choices of this movie, at least, or the way that it played to me, was that at no point was, to me, he was ever depicted as a badass or as like, or in a way where the audience was supposed to think, oh, look at him being so cool, like killing these people and doing these cool action sequences and stuff. In fact, I think the movie did kind of a good job of illustrating how silly the whole notion of a man attempting to do these things is. To me, one of the best scenes is the reenactment in the Western town that he sees. And we kind of see just like the big macho cowboys like doing a gunfight, pew, pew, pew. And we see how silly and like lame that is almost. And then he is at times like tries to maybe say stuff like fill your water. Is that one of the things that he says? And at the end, I think fill your hand, maybe.
Which is a direct
and
quote
then he says,
from a John Wayne movie.
Right. And then he also says, I think like at the end when he is asked to leave town, he says, oh, before noon or something, or before sundown. And so I think the movie, to me, actually did a very good job at kind of depicting more of the cruelty of what he's doing, and actually also did a very good job at not making the action scenes fun and exciting. At no point did this violence look exciting or cool, whether it was perpetrated by the rapist in the beginning or at any time by Paul Kersey. And that was actually one of the things I appreciated about this movie.
Okay. So I think this is really interesting because this is, I think this is something I think I've learned about myself in both doing this podcast and also in my own writing and then in teaching writing, is that I prefer a movie that is either very clear or like clearer about what it's trying to say, or is clearer about the ambivalence being the point. You say that the movie is clear that we're supposed to find what he's doing disturbing, and that the violence is filmed in a way to be disturbing. I actually disagree. And I think just looking at the things that were changed from the book, I think you get a better idea. You get a better idea of what, like, kind of more the direction they were going.
I actually disagree with that, because I also read the synopsis of the book, and the book was so much.
We're both experts.
No, but the book was so much more on the nose about everything, and I did not like that at all. Like, I think you said that I think the movie is clear about its intention. I don't think that at all. I think like there is, and I think it is actually ambiguous enough. Potentially, I don't think Michael Winner himself was necessarily a great pacifist, but it was just more that, like, I think it opens itself up to a reading that's actually not concrete. And I think that is interesting to me. And I think the book actually makes a lot of his choices, at least on paper, sound the same kind of cool that if the Death Wish movie were to do them, I would have actually bristled at those.
So I think it's the main thing that the big addition that the movie makes, from what I gather, again, neither of us have read this book. From what I gather is all of the stuff about Western iconography was added for the movie. And that, of course, it makes sense. Charles Bronson is a former, like, Western star. But the character in the book is like a nebbish. Like, Bronson himself was like, I don't think I'm appropriate for this. And they kind of rewrote the character to fit him more. The idea, from what I gather in the book, he just goes to Tucson and he just is able to buy a gun more easily because it's not New York City. But in the movie, when they were writing the script, they initially had a scene where he watches an Old West movie. They changed that to the reenactment, which I love because it's so much more visually interesting. That is also one of my favorite scenes. Also because I love theme park Old West shows, and seeing them ad-lib the lip sync the dialogue.
It was so fun.
It's very fun. But we get that, and we also get him purposefully quoting Western movies. We get at the end where the Gardenia character tells him to leave town, and he says, "What do I have to go by sundown?" You know, right. It's a classic Old West scene, and from the quotes from Garfield, the author, it seems like he was is inspired by, I guess, he and or a family member both were involved in some kind of mugging or low-level street crime. And he said in both cases, he had an instant primal urge to be like, I'm going to kill that guy.
Right, yeah.
And his idea was, what if I got into that headspace and was never able to get out of it? And I get that. I've been robbed before, and that is like, my first thought was like, oh, I wish that guy fucking died. He stole my iPod. It was a while ago. But like, I think there is a difference between a framing of the Paul Kersey, it's a different name in the book, Paul Benjamin, I think. The Paul Benjamin character becoming primal, which I think more naturally think of as bad, and the movie's framing of just the way he says in his conversation with his son-in-law, becoming a pioneer. Becoming returning to an old West way. And so you say, the violence was purposely filmed to be disgusting. I just don't think it was exciting. I think if they could have made and I think the sequels by the same director kind of show that if they could have made the violence more thrilling, I think they would have.
I mean, well, hold on. So if they could have, they would have. Is that what you mean? Hold on.
And they did later on.
Why didn't they?
Why do you think they were? What in the movie? Which of the scenes do you think is purposefully shown to be not cool? Is trying to make us feel disturbed.
I mean, it seems like all of it, because his reaction is always an outsized reaction to the situation. And then you see the faces of the people, their eyes, they're terrified of him. Like, and in those moments, I didn't feel like the movie was saying, or again, like, could be interpreted differently, but to me, it felt like what it was saying is like, look at this monster, like it was like, because of their reaction, you perceive as what Paul Kersey doing, not as this glorious vigilante justice, but as like something that actually is harming real humans. And I found that very, at no point, and I think also the score is very good. I think the score is pretty subtle with things. Herbie Hancock. And I mean, obviously it has its like cliche moments, but it never at any point, the orchestration of it was never such at those moments where you're supposed to feel victorious or revel in the violence, but rather recoiled more. And I feel like also just the suddenness with which things would happen. He would literally just turn around for the most part and just shoot them. And I don't know. It worked for me.
Yeah, I think it's just if we were trying to show, like, to disturb the audience, there are just so many ways the movie could have done that. And a big one would be to give any of the people he kills a little more humanity. You say that they look scared, but it's like, to me, anytime they look scared, it's kind of like, ha ha, the tables have turned. Where opposed, like,
I guess, like, I never perceived it as that. I can totally understand that this is a valid reading of the movie. I'm not saying, but to me, again, at any point, I was always just like, oh, this is kind of icky. Well, what is happening now?
Here is, like, in movies like this, because this is a common trope of, like, the character that unleashes their inner id, and the story explores the thrill of that, the fun of that, but then also doesn't condone it. You know, anything from Death Wish style ripoffs like Jodie Foster's The Brave One to something like Breaking Bad. There are
I will say, for The Brave One, it's boring as fuck. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's not good.
But, like, I shouldn't use that as an example because I actually don't know if they do this. But there is, like, in all the movies that have this kind of story, there are easy tropes to kind of show that we shouldn't fully be on the side of this guy. And the tropes are like, what if he accidentally killed the wrong person? What if we saw either a character that a victim, or a character we like, someone he helps, be horrified by his actions? Like, he thinks they're going to thank him, but they're actually like, stay away from me, stay away from me. Or a scene where, you know, we get one scene where we get many scenes where he's talking to his son-in-law, a character I hated.
Who keeps calling him dad? It was so annoying. I was like, he's not your dad, and mom, or his wife is not your mom.
Mom's in the hospital. Yeah, I fucking hated that so much. I don't know if that's a thing in the book. Maybe that character's an orphan. I don't know, but
that is creepier.
We don't get, yeah. I'm not saying he was adopted. There's a whole subtext of step sibling porn in the background of this movie. But, like, we don't get we don't get a scene where, well, first of all, we don't have another character that we like, who's like has a good relationship with Paul, who can be horrified by his actions. The only one who could do that is Jack, but Jack is so feckless, and Jack also is we never get a scene where Jack's like, "What are you talking about, Dad?"
I think he gets there slightly in some of their conversations when they get I don't have the exact quotes, but like I think that he does get to a point where he's like, what is happening? I mean, there's also the visual thing of when he goes to visit Paul and he repainted all the walls orange like a monster. And he's just like drinking it up and he's like, yeah.
True. And that is like a main scene there. But like that could be a scene about like this guy's losing his mind. And if you are interpreting the movie as being like, this is a story of a man going down a dangerous path and becoming a monster, then yes, absolutely there is enough in that scene, depending on, I guess, color theory. But at the same time, he painted the walls to cover up the spray paint from the killers that was still there. So you could also interpret the painting over as symbolizing him. He's taken his life back. He's listening to music. Like you can interpret that scene either way.
Oh, no, but that to me is the interesting thing about this movie, again, is that like I think it kind of plays. I think if you want to be this like rah, like, you know, muggers are terrible and deserve to be executed, like this could be the movie for you. But I think if you are kind of interested in the more like the more ambivalent take on that, I think it also exists in this movie just as much, in my opinion. Not to say that this movie is flawless. I'm not saying that, obviously. Like all the stuff that you mentioned could have definitely, you know, improved the movie, maybe made for like interesting scenes regardless. Yeah, like, yes. But to me, it seems so at odds with the kind of the knee-jerk kind of one sentence take that I think people have about this movie. And maybe that's why I feel the need to maybe be more defensive of it than I would have otherwise. Because to me, it's far more complicated than just saying like, oh, this is like, you know, it's just like bullshit propaganda about how crime is bad in cities. So that's all.
Yeah, no, I think my major problem with this movie is not the politics. I think the politics are kind of confused because it seems to me like this is an adaptation of a book that probably makes its message much more clear. And the movie makes choices that dilute that message either on purpose or just in the search for a more entertaining film. Like they say that the script includes a lot of the philosophical dialogue from the movie, but like, and I don't from the book, and I haven't read the book, but like there's the scene at the party where characters are talking. And it's a fancy dinner party. And one character says, well, obviously the vigilante is racist. And another character says, why do you say that? And the other guy says, well, he shot way more black people than white people. And the other person says, well, there are more black muggers than white muggers. What do you want? Equality amongst the muggers. And then the guy we've already had set up as the shitty Republican dude goes, equality amongst muggers. Nice one. And I feel like in the book, that scene is much more, again, I haven't read it, but probably if that dialogue is in the book, probably plays more out of as like a satirical indictment of these people in this party. Whereas in the movie, it seems more like, yeah, listen to this fucking crank, bleeding heart liberal accusing the killer of having not a quota of not finding racial equality of his murder victims, and then this hot lady is able to get one up on him. Like that scene could have been in a Daily Caller movie.
I did not think. I actually perceived that scene as what you ascribe to the book neither of us have read. I kind of found the way that he also films that scene is kind of interesting. It's way more claustrophobic than I think a lot of the movie. It's very crowded and stuff.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me like it was more of just like oh, look at this room stuffed of these rich people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I did not actually perceive that. Again, open to interpretation, but to me, it was actually clear. I am also interested in the fact that we kind of keep referring to the book and like assuming that the book is good.
Well, it's mostly I'm not assuming it's good. It's mostly just like the author
more clear
himself
about its intentions.
Yes, the author himself has said that his book was a condemnation and he didn't like the movie because he thought it actually endorsed the vigilantism.
Right. I understand that, but I feel like we've had a bit of a history with authors who are unhappy with the way that their movie turned out on the screen, and sometimes they're wrong.
And you and I both agree that the Shining TV miniseries with Steven Weber and Rebecca De Mornay is clearly the better version. Stephen King was right.
Right. Or like the way more even closer example to that, Anthony Burgess wrote Clockwork Orange after a fairly similar origin story of like, I think his wife got assaulted by a group of teens and he kind of wrote Clockwork Orange as a result of that. And I think he was also equally unhappy with Clockwork Orange. I think this movie actually references Clockwork Orange in the beginning scene, which that was to me actually, that part I actually didn't really like, the fact that they are going for the more Alex DeLongian like version of the rape scene in the beginning, or maybe I was reading too much into it and I was like, this is going to be derivative of that, would it not?
But it didn't
end up being that. Yeah.
Clockwork Orange is a fascinating case. It's been years since I read that book, but if I remember correctly, that's a case where literally the film takes the final chapter out of the book, and that chapter is like the message of the movie that completely changes the moral of the story. But going back to the movie at hand, I got off track talking about the party scene, but like what I'm really saying is like it's not really the politics part that bothers me. It's that like there are movies with politics I don't like that I enjoy watching, and I think I just found this movie a little dull. And anytime it like hinted towards elements in the story that I would have found more interesting, it either blew past them or like barely talked about them at all. You know, stuff like the process of how a man lures criminals, or stuff like the public and the political reaction to this. Because like right now, the political reaction to the United Health killing in our real world, the political media public reaction is fascinating. The reaction to the murder of Jordan Neely is fascinating. And those stories are so much bigger than the reaction. The story of the reaction is so much bigger than the deaths themselves. So for this movie to just focus on Charles Bronson walks into an A train, shoots someone. Then he walks onto an F train, shoots someone. Vincent Gardenia sneezes a lot and then solves the crime. End of story.
They never paid that off, by the way. I was expecting some sort of shooting a Pelham 1-2-3 situation with the sneezing.
Is exactly what I was thinking. And I wanted to watch this whole movie. I was like, God, I wish I was watching The Taking of Pelham 1-2-3.
Oh, Taking of Pelham. Yeah. It's a fun movie.
By the way, you listeners, you are lucky that this episode isn't being delayed further, because last night I had to watch this movie and I'm like, yeah, 1974. Oh, that's the same year Black Christmas came out. And I had some friends over and they were on their way out because no one wanted to watch Death Wish. And my friend Rebecca was like, oh, I've never seen Black Christmas. And oh my God, the amount that I wanted to be like, Veronica, the recording's postponed. I'm watching Black Christmas instead. One of my favorite movies of all time, and a movie that is so much better than this movie.
I've never seen it either.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
But yeah, again, I'm not saying this movie is art. I'm also kind of not saying that it's I don't know, it's like The Wire and its indictment of our corrupt system and cops. And I'm not saying that, but I found at least like its depiction or its acknowledgement of, yeah, like City Hall and the police would be in kind of a weird spot with regards to the vigilante of like, okay, the public supports him. Like, what do? We kind of have to keep face and, or save face. And I found all of that interesting too. I found that ending to be kind of nihilistic in a right amount. You read like some of the options that they had for the
very stupid.
I think out of all the options, I think that one was the most subtle, I guess. And yeah, I found that stuff to be pretty interesting, especially for a movie from that time where I feel like did not necessarily need to engage with that as much. The fact that they did kind of have that plot line in there of City Hall trying to be like, well, like, try to make him stop, but like, don't hurt him. And like, let's like try to walk this line. Like, okay. I thought it was pretty interesting.
It felt less like an interesting to me. It felt less like an interesting exploration of kind of the tough position the law enforcement and politics of New York were, and more like, here's the loophole we're going to write to so that Paul survives at the end. It's like, so for the book, a major thing that they did when adapting the book is that they made the police detective a major character and the investigation a parallel plot line. From what I gather, I could be wrong, that is not in the book. I know Ocha is not a major character in the book, the Vincent Gardenia character. He's there, but he's not a major character. And I understand, like, that makes sense, I guess, is like a way to turn this into a film. But I don't think
mouse game.
I don't think they do enough with it. Ocha's basically on his trail instantly, which is funny. But
I think that's also like more realistic. Like for the most part.
Turns out it's not.
Well, I mean, first off, I guess in this current case, we don't actually know what happened and how quickly things were found.
Paul put in much less planning, clearly, than...
Yes, but I think it is kind of interesting how... and to me, way more realistic that, like, yeah, like he would not be some criminal mastermind who would, like, figure it out. He's an architect. And I think it was interesting how, I mean, they didn't, like, do the thing where it's like he knew exactly who it was, but he kind of knew the contours of it. And I thought that, like, for a smart police officer, like, that's probably the case. Like, they would have, whether they would be able to competently find him, that's another thing. But, like, having an hypothesis did not seem that out of the realm of possibility.
I think I would have been more interested watching scenes with who is it, the DA? Show me the conversations that they're having much more than Ocha giving directions to his team. Because those scenes, it's certainly not like Tommy Lee Jones and his team in The Fugitive. It is nowhere near as interesting in that.
Oh, and no. Though I think he has a fun presence, and I agree with you. That part,
Gardenia
that part is way
great.
Less developed to me. I think, they could have definitely done more with the sort of the fact that a lot of the city, especially like even the politicians and people, are like, yeah, it's fine that he's doing it. Like, we need to kind of like go through the motions of pretending that like we care about these people dying, but we actually don't, and this is fine. But we have to kind of put on this public face of like, oh, no, vigilantism is bad. And I wish they had done more with that, because I think it is very interesting. But yeah, they had like kind of, again, for a movie that I thought would be garbage, like there was more than enough like kernels of ideas that to me felt like, given the length of the movie, like if this movie were 2.5 hours and we got as much information as we got in this movie, I would have been way more pissed. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, they brought up all the stuff, not all of it is super developed, but it's fine.
Well, let's compare like the endings, and because it's more just like, I find it doesn't go deep enough into this stuff, and it's a little muddled. So from what we can tell from the amazing Wikipedia synopsis of the book we read, it is clearer that Paul is losing his mind, and then at the end he tries to surrender, and the police just tip their hat and choose not to, and make it clear that they're not going to arrest him, and they walk away. And it's a much clearer, I assume, a much clearer thing of like, oh, the police are just going to let him continue doing these horrible things. Wow, that's scary. Whereas in this one, it's the police are like, because of him, mugging statistics are down because he's like Batman and he's scaring all the criminals. And so, but we don't want the public to know mugging statistics are down, because then they'll also want to be Batman, and we can't have a bunch of Batman. And we don't want one Batman, but we want people to think Batman's still there. So what we want you to do is to get him. Don't kill him, because then he'll be a martyr Batman, but instead tell him to go to Chicago. And then we'll tell the public that Batman's still out there. And I'm just like this is just like, whatever. It's just like,
this is literally the beginning of Dark Knight Rises, I believe.
Yes. And I feel like Dark Knight Rises, a movie I don't love, explores these ideas better.
Well, yeah, I mean, that movie is also 2.5 hours at least. But I thought it was actually, I don't know, to me, it's kind of a more interesting idea.
Water went down the wrong pipe. There's no way for me to get around that sound. Sorry. Continue.
I think it's just like, it's a more... I think it is like a more interesting idea to me of like, we actually realize that the idea of the vigilante is important to the city. And so we want to keep that. And like, I think that's actually a very good way to wrap it up. And actually it is kind of hilarious to me that they end up sending him to Chicago, considering the sort of the conversation in the conservative circles about how terrible Chicago is. But I don't know. To me, that worked. To me, that was a reasonable resolution. I did not need a continuation of the movie where we see, criminals kind of bulk at like whatever their version of the bat signal is. Like, I understood the motive, and I understood kind of the choice that they were making.
I'm going to make a weird comparison. Did you ever see the Doctor Who spin-off series Torchwood?
No. I never saw Doctor Who, I don't think. I think I've seen one episode of the Christopher Eccleston Doctor Who.
So I remember I was when like in like 2000, I guess it came back in 2005. So like 2008 or something, I started to watch the new Who. And at that point, like Torchwood had already existed. Oh, I think I watched this actually before I watched Doctor Who. Torchwood was a show, and like the idea was it was like mature Doctor Who for adults. Like Doctor Who's sidekicks are here and they fuck. And
was the main guy Doctor Who?
Not on Torchwood. It was Captain Jack. But there was a mini series that they made, like I think it's the instead of a third season, they made a mini series of the show Torchwood. And that was, I think, the first Doctor Who thing I saw because the description sounded so interesting. It's called Children of Earth. And basically, the premise of the show, and I'm going to get these details wrong, and I'm not like, it's not important, but like I'm basically aliens show up. We don't see them. And in a very fun, creepy thing, they make all the children of Earth suddenly freeze and speak a message simultaneously. Very great visual image, very spooky. But basically what they say is that they want, I'm trying to find out how many, what is the percent? They want, either they will kill all of humanity, or Earth can give them 10% of the population's children. And they will not say what they're going to do with the children, but they want 10% of the Earth's children. And
do they say what they're going to do with the planet?
I forget. Probably they're gonna kill everyone, or they're just gonna take a bunch of kids. And the thing is, there are storylines about our heroes, like Captain Jack or whatever, trying to fight the aliens. I don't know if we even see the aliens. They're kind of unknowable. And what is actually the most interesting part of the show is that the major storyline is all the British politicians sitting in a room having meetings about how they're going to respond to this, and eventually getting to the place of like, okay, how are we going to choose which children? And they basically like create a lottery that's designed to look random, but then clearly make it so that like rich children aren't going to get picked, yada, yada, yada. You can see where this goes. And like all the things where all the people like protecting their own children. And then I think there's one point where they're like, one of our kids has to be in it so that the public thinks it actually was a fair lottery. Like I haven't seen this for 15 years, but like it was fascinating. And
that sounds good. It sounds like a Shirley Jackson short story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think there is one version of like this type of story, Death Wish, where it's that. Where it is kind of what's going on in our real world right now, where all these people, all these like clearly like the law enforcement and like the CEOs of the world are like, how can we stop people from liking this shooter guy? We need to, and like yesterday or 2 days ago, they charged him with terrorism. And yesterday we had the absurd perp walk with the mayor present. Like the meetings of them choosing how they were going to do that, I'm sure were the most fascinating conversations that Eric Adams has ever been a part of. Low bar, I'm sure. But like there's a version of that.
He spoke to the leaders of the world. He spoke to the leader of Turkey.
He's had a bunch of great conversations on Turkish Airlines. But like there is a thing where it is purely about people like the politics of trying to put a lid on it. That's one version that I think I would love. There's another version where it's like, oh, this man is definitely going insane. And there's like the Breaking Bad version of this story. And then there is the reactionary John Wick version where it's just like crazy action scenes where he's blowing these guys away and he's like making like fucking Home Alone style traps to catch the muggers. And I think I would enjoy any one of those three versions, even the politically gross one, more than I enjoyed this movie, which is just kind of faints a little bit towards any of them, but doesn't go all the way, leaving me just kind of bored. I think Death Wish 3, a famously terrible, gross, racist movie, I think I would probably enjoy it more than this one.
Interesting. Well, if it was at any point number one at the box office.
No, it was not.
Oh, well. All right. Can I say one last thing before we stop talking about this movie?
No, you remember we signed that contract. I have to have the last word.
Oh, okay.
No, please. I just talked forever.
I will say that there's a line delivery in this movie that I found.
I saw your letterbox.
So charming. It's the entirety of my letterbox review, which is the character actor Jack Wallace, young Jack Wallace. At one point when they were trying to hunt down Paul Kersey, trying to follow him, and he's just not understanding the directions that he is being given because they're conflicted because, obviously they're kind of following what the mayor is saying. He says, "Weird." To Detective Ochoa, and I found it so hilarious.
I just realized where I know that guy from. He's one of the crew guys from Bookie Nights, isn't he?
Yeah.
I was too distracted watching all the cop scenes, wondering when Christopher Guest was going to show up, because he was listed as like detective something or other.
It was a real delight. If there was a GIF of this, I might use it, or maybe I should be the change I want to see in the world and make that GIF.
Do it. I think that's a great reaction GIF. And I'm very. While I didn't hate this movie. I was just a little bit bored. And I enjoy that you're not bored. And I will admit that there is more interesting stuff here than maybe like what I thought. There's more interesting filming choices, framing choices, stuff like that. Just left what I said at the beginning. It left me cold. And so I guess we've wasted an hour.
That's okay.
I'm just back to what I said at the beginning.
Well, as long as we agreed that this was better made than Wicked, we're all on the same page.
I will say
at least better color saturation. You gotta give me that.
I'm sure that our final grades are going to be closer than they were for Wicked.
All right. Well, shall we make it official? All right.
God, I'm going back and forth. All right. Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1. B.
C plus.
All right. We're actually not that far removed.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Because, I didn't hate this movie. It was more that I was like, this could have been better.
That's fair. All right. Do we want to recap all the things that we have seen?
Please, I don't know that I've seen that much since our last episode. So why don't you dive in?
All right. Well, first things first. I rewatched Dodgeball or True Underdog Story. Mostly because my boyfriend has never seen it. And I was like, oh, it's actually kind of fun. It is pretty fun. I would say a good amount of it holds up. Not all of it. But the stuff that does is still very charming to me. Speaking of charming, but maybe holds up less, I saw Y2K, which I was pretty excited about. I thought a lot of the jokes were pretty solid, but to me, it actually felt like that movie was kind of edited to death. It really felt like it was just cut up to pieces because we had kind of setups for things that were never paid off. We had payoffs for things that were never set up. And it was a bit of a mess. I think the movie also makes the mistake of keeping around the characters that are most boring and sacrificing the interesting characters for cool kills, which I guess I can see why, but that kind of made the movie more boring as it went along. But, the jokes are good. Kyle Mooney is great. I saw 2 great movies. I saw Philadelphia Story, which I've never seen before. And on 35 millimeter, and it was quite a delight. I think it's my first Katharine Hepburn movie, unless you count The Aviator, which we probably shouldn't. But she was great. I mean, all the 3 of them were fantastic. Jimmy Stewart, Cary Grant, just Great chemistry all around. I think drunk Jimmy Stewart is so funny. He has an extended scene where he is very drunk and he pronounces Cary Grant's very stupid name that I can't recall now, but he keeps repeating it and it's very fun. And I saw a movie that I loved with zero reservations. Thelma, have you seen it? It's from this year.
Yet.
It's the June Squibb action comedy. And it's truly so fun. I love this movie so much. I think the action parody stuff works so well, but especially the heart of the movie is her character's journey and her relationship with her grandson that is so well executed, and her friendship with Richard Roundtree, aka Shaft, whose final performance this movie is just so good. Like, my heart grew 7 sizes watching that movie. I also saw yesterday Craven the Hunter.
Why?
Me and my 2 friends were more than 50% of the audience in an 11 a.m. screening of Craven the Hunter.
Why?
Because I don't know, it felt like it might be Madam Web level of crazy, and it was not. I say in my Letterboxd review that it felt like at times like a hate crime against Russians in terms of all the weird accents that people are attempting. Yeah, it's very dumb and it's mostly boring, so definitely safe to skip. What about you, John? Did you come up with stuff you've seen?
So I saw a few things that I have seen before. But let's start. The new one I saw was I finally saw A Real Pain.
Oh, nice.
You saw that a while back, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I'm a pioneer.
I really liked it. It's at times deeply uncomfortable. As anytime the Kieran Culkin is really Kieran Culkin character is really giving it to Will Sharp. I was very uncomfortable as someone who doesn't like awkward confrontations. But all in all, I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really good exploration of depression and about kind of the guilt of having an easier life than other people, be they your ancestors or just your family or just other people in the world. And I thought it was really good. I liked it a lot.
Nice.
We'll
good
see.
Choice.
Our top 10 of the year is coming up. We'll see if it. I imagine it might it might make its way into the lower half of the list, but we'll see. We'll see. The movie I'm seeing tonight. We'll see if that bumps everything down.
Damn.
But
hold on, the lower part of your list, is that? Do you mean like near 10 or near 1?
I mean lower, as in by 10. If it bumps it off the list.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I don't know. I have not made my list yet, but I know like right now it's
neither have I.
Nearish to the top, but not at the top. But yeah, I thought the performances were great. I really enjoyed Eisenberg's dialogue. In fact, I was flipping through the script and I am like, yes, I like the way this is written.
He's Woody Allen trained.
Here's Noah Baumbach trained as well.
That's true. No, he worked with a lot of neurotic Jewish people.
You could tell. My favorite neurotic Jewish movie, Zombieland.
Yeah.
But I also I rewatched one of the truly great holiday specials of all time. Charlie Brown Christmas is my absolute favorite TV Christmas special. The Grinch is right around there. But another one that if people haven't seen is so fantastic is the 1982. Oh, yes, 1982 British animated short based on the 1978 book of the same name, The Snowman. Have you ever seen The Snowman, Veronica?
No, based on your review, I added it to my watch list. I have not seen it.
Recently, in the past few years, I watched it for the first time since being a child, and I gave it a rare 5-star review on Letterboxd. It is one of the most gorgeous 2D hand-drawn animation things ever seen. It's all, I think, colored pencils, and it is beautiful. And there are flying sequences. Having worked in animation, there are so many things that you just kind of don't do because they're so hard and there are easier ways to do it. This movie does every one of them. Just watching the flying scenes in this and thinking about how difficult it must have been to just conceptualize what those look like in an era before drone footage that you could just kind of copy. Like, I don't even know how they did it. It is beautiful. It's charming. There's no dialogue. It's all music by Howard Blake, and the music is fantastic. If you have never seen The Snowman, it is not. Look, spoilers, Santa cameos at the end, but it is not so inherently Christmas. It is more winter time. So even if you are not Christian, if you like animation anyway and have never seen this, look up The Snowman. It is fully on YouTube right now. It is incredible. I also watched for the first time, because I didn't even know it existed, the 2012 sequel, The Snowman and the Snow Dog. And it is the same thing, but worse. It sucks. It bummed me out. I didn't like it.
I won't do that then.
But for everyone, watch The Snowman. And for everyone, including my co-host, watch Bob Clark's 1974 masterpiece, Black Christmas. It is one of the great horror movies of all time. It's fantastic. And its politics, unlike Death Wish, are very clear and are shockingly progressive.
Wow. All right. Maybe I'll wait until you're in town and then we can watch it with Jon commentary.
Oh, no, I would never speak up during that movie because I might talk over the obscene phone calls, which are genuinely some of the most upsetting, frightening horror scenes of all time. Just perfectly realized and shot. The first phone call when the camera's panning over all the sorority girls as they are listening to this frightening voice on the phone is just so eerie. Great cast, great movie. Very Canadian.
Nice. All right. Well, we've made it all the way to the end of the Death Wish local train, and we have not been assaulted or assaulted others. And so I think that means it's time for us to safely disembark the box office time machine, or maybe embark onto it and travel to the future. Is that good? Is this good?
This is great.
Good. Okay.
I've been holding groceries on this time machine this whole time, hoping that a mugger would come up to me. Because as we learned from the movie, the best way to lure a mugger is to hold groceries, something that I had never heard before.
Especially from the chain store D'Agostino, that I feel zero sympathy for because they are probably the most expensive store in Manhattan and they can go fuck themselves.
Look, Paul Kersey and his family, they shopped at Seatown. This never would have happened.
Exactly.
Veronica, what's coming up in the near future?
Well, I'll be doing some light traveling in the future. So we won't have an episode until probably after the weekend of January 10th. And I can tell you what wonderful stuff comes out in January. There is Den of Thieves 2, Pantera. And yes, there was a Den of Thieves 1. This is not a troll situation. It's another Gerard Butler schlock that I truly hope we don't have to see. Another thing in wide release, something that I'm actually genuinely intrigued by, Better Man. The Robbie Williams biopic where
I'm thinking of a different man.
he is being played by a monkey, but no one else is, and everyone else treats him as if he's not a monkey. Anyway, I'm kind of into that. I used to love Take That when I was little, so good on them. Those are the only two things in wide release. And the weekend before that, we have something called Vermilio, which I think is about an historic drama about how there was very cold one time and people on this island killed a bunch of people that then maybe came back to haunt them. So there's that. Something that happened previous to this is the release of Nosferatu wide, so maybe that would still be number one at the box office.
One of our co-hosts is seeing it in a few hours.
That's true. Very exciting. So yeah, it will be either something that was dumped in January or something that was released more limitedly in December and is doing really well in January.
Or if there's nothing we like, we'll take that opportunity to do our best of the year.
Maybe.
Depends if I have time to watch Brutalist before then.
Yeah, I feel like I have. I didn't want to commit to that yet because I truly have a list of probably like 10 movies that I want to see.
Yeah, we usually do that in early February, and that's probably for the best.
Yeah. But
because we are not professional critics. We do not get invited to free screenings of every good movie.
But if we were... I think, you know what? I think if we really tried, we could get like on Rotten Tomatoes on their radar.
Let's get some press passes. You and I deserve some press passes.
Yeah. All right, maybe that's our New Year resolution.
We did pretty well about our 2024 New Year's resolution.
That's true. That's very good. Yeah, we should applaud ourselves.
Better than most people do with their New Year's resolution. For anyone who forgets, exactly. Our New Year's resolution this year was to stick to a consistent release schedule for these episodes. And we're literally clapping to ourselves on a week when our episode is coming out a week too late.
But I think it's like the only time. So,
there was a couple in the middle.
Oh, damn it. Come on. Come on. We did it. Let's clap ourselves.
Did pretty well. Right. We did better than in other years.
Exactly.
But hey, the future's looking bright. We'll find out tonight if we have a government that still works. I'm really dating this episode with all the current events talk.
All right, let's do some perennial humor.
Those clowns in Congress have done it again.
Yes. Don't even get me started about these politicians.
All right. So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Toot toot.
Toot.
I'm doing finger guns. Pew, 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 pew. He doesn't do that. The movie would be better if it ended with him going pew 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 pew. I'm Charlie Bronson.
Maybe the second one does.
Yeah,
I'm Charlie Bronson.
We're gonna have to see it. Death Wish 2. We'll talk about that next time. No, we won't.
Oh boy.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.